Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 169 of Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter and YouTube at Shane Haff NFL. I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You've heard him on the Tough Cover radio show and on Armchair Scouts. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. _. Mark, how are you doing this morning?
That's a loaded question. I'm traveling the country. I'm halfway across the country from where I usually am. But Eagles win on Friday. Good. Notre Dame loses the most embarrassing game in the history of my life as a fan on Saturday as a 28.5-point underdog. First team in the history of the MAC to lose to a MAC team as a top 5 team. Bad. So I'm okay. I'm in the middle.
I'll tell you what, Mark. I'll make a deal with you. I will not mention Notre Dame if you don't mention OU or Texas.
You won, though. You won. People forget about it. You won.
Yeah, till next week. That's garbage. But and we'll just talk NFL, and then we can both feel good about everything.
Yeah,
that sound good?
Exactly.
All right. Well, we are going to dive into our first recap show of the year. We're finally back, guys. Each and every Monday, occasionally Sunday nights, as Mark's travel dictates, we're going to recap all the games from the NFL slate. We won't really get into Eagles much because that's what every other show on the feed does, but we're going to lead off with the NFC East divisional rivals, and then we'll throw it around to the rest of the games. So think of us as like red zone on steroids, that we're going to give you the top takeaways you need from each game so you're caught up with the rest of the league, except, of course, Monday Night Football, because we are recording Monday morning. So let's dive in. First of all, let's go to New York and let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings at the New York Giants. The Vikings win this game 28-6. Mark, if you want to resurrect your career as a quarterback, just figure out a way to play the Giants every week. Sam Darnold in this game goes 19 of 24 for 208 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. He's only sacked once. He started the game off with 12 straight completions. Meanwhile, on the other side, Daniel Jones had as many sacks in this game as Sam Darnold had incompletions. Daniel Jones had a top 12 time to throw in week 1, but he had the second lowest average depth of target, and he completed only 52% of those passes. So to recap, he held the ball very long, threw the ball very short, and completed very few of those passes. Since signing his 4-year, $160 million contract, Daniel Jones has thrown more touchdowns to the opposing team than he has to his own team. So Eagles fans, we went straight from the long-lived Dave Gettleman era right into the long-lived Joe Schoen era. Mark, what was your takeaway from this game?
I said on the preview that we did last week, if the Giants' passing offense can't look good in this game, they're going to have serious problems all year long. 22 for 42, 186 yards, 4.4 yards per attempt, 5 sacks, 2 interceptions. I think that shows exactly everything it needs to show right there. I said going into the year, I think the Vikings have the worst secondary in football. PFF actually ranked them 27th, so they were a little higher on them than I was. The Giants are 31st, so one of the only teams worse than them was in this game. But I think the Vikings, I think this is one of those classic week 1 matchups where people are going to take away from it that the Vikings are very good. I don't think that's the takeaway. I think the takeaway is just how much of a disaster the New York Giants are. And we have a comment there from Joe Wood. Giants are just a bad franchise. They have very good players on defense and just look lost. I think there's a lot of times when your offense is so beyond inept, it makes maybe an average defense look bad, or even an above average defense look below average. And I don't think that the Giants are a good defense or an above average defense. I don't think you have to look at the defense for what went wrong in this game, though, for sure. So I agree with Joe. I think this is all on the offense. Daniel Jones couldn't get anything going. You look at the ground, he couldn't even get anything going on the ground. Devin Singletary stunk out of the backfield. I mean, if only they had a good running back on that team last year that maybe they could have kept around. It's an absolute nightmare situation for the Giants. There's no fixing it. You're probably going to get Drew Lock in the next 2 months, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Unless And well, I don't know that Drew Lock gives you a better chance to win. I was going to say unless you just are actively tanking for a quarterback, but I don't know that Drew Lock improves upon Daniel Jones. So the Giants are going to be in contention for the number 1 overall pick. There's no doubt about it. The early favorites it's got to be them and the Panthers, and we'll get to the Panthers later. But brutal performance by the Giants. For the Vikings, injuries continue to be a thing here. Jordan Addison left this game with an injury. I haven't heard if that ended up being a serious injury or not, but I know he was banged up in camp. You lose JJ McCarthy in training camp. So a rough bout with injuries for the Vikings, but they start off with I won't call it an impressive win, but they start off with a win over the Giants.
Yeah, they play San Fran next week. I think that I will say I generally like to fade teams coming off of Monday Night Football in the short week, but something tells me that'll probably be a snap back to reality moment for the Vikings. Even with the 49ers playing on a short week, I would probably say that'll be a tough one. But yeah, how many games are the Giants going to wait until? If you look at the Giants' schedule, they have a really legitimate chance at a long losing streak here. I think it eases up in the middle a little bit. I saw Chris Fallica, the Bear. He's a college football guy mostly, but he was tweeting about just how bad the Giants could be this year. Next couple of weeks at Commanders, that's actually one of their easiest games of the year probably, but they're still a 2.5-point dog there. At Cleveland, they play Dallas, at Seattle, Cincinnati, Philadelphia.
There's the easy game. Cincinnati.
It could be.
We'll get to them later too. But
For
Mark
sure.
pegged that one.
I'm pretty confident in that I was right about the Bengals. But Cincinnati will still win 7-8 games, even if they're bad. So that'll still be a tough one for the Giants. I guess at least it's at home. But then you get Philly, you get at Pittsburgh, and then you get finally the Commanders, Panthers, Bucks stretch that you could maybe get some wins in. But I do think Drew Lock gives them a significantly better chance to win at this point. He was fine in his 2 games last year, Drew Lock, but I don't think Daniel Jones is a starting quarterback. I've been saying, how long have we been doing this pod now? Is this our fourth season?
I think it's season 4. Yeah.
I don't think my opinion changed I don't think my opinion's changed on Daniel Jones at all. I think it's the exact same opinion I had the first time we recorded this pod.
Yeah. It's, there's a reason that you give a franchise tag. Like the absolute perfect place to use a franchise tag is when you bring in a new coach that's QB whisperer and, hey, the quarterback looks good in season 1, although he only throws it 2 yards downfield. But no, you franchise tag the running back and sign him long-term, and you got to deal with that now. So the Giants are a disaster, just like we knew they would be. Let's go to a team that looked pretty good. Let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. They go to Cleveland. They win this game 33-17. But the biggest news of the day wasn't even the game. It broke before the game when they announced they've signed Dak Prescott to an extension. It's at $60 million a year. So they've signed CeeDee Lamb. They've signed Dak Prescott. I quote tweeted that, and I said, Micah Parsons, you are a free agent. And guys, the Twitter algorithm's weird. Like I tweet so much stuff and the random things that go viral, but that tweet blew up and I have no idea why. But they're going to have a hard time. They weren't able to make postseason runs when they weren't paying Dak $60 million, when CeeDee Lamb was on that rookie contract. It's going to get harder from here. But if you just narrow the focus to this game, the Dallas, I'm not sure which is there's probably an element of both, so I'll give both. But takeaway 1 is the Dallas defense dominated this game. They end with 25 pressures, 6 sacks, and 2 takeaways. They held Cleveland to 2 of 15 on third down. They held them to 3.3 yards per play. I mean, the flip side of that coin is the Browns' offense is garbage. Like Deshaun Watson is a bad quarterback. When we did our rankings, I ranked him 23rd out of, I think it was 28 non-rookie starting quarterbacks. And I think that was too high. Like that might have been disrespectful to Will Levis to have him below Deshaun Watson.
We'll get to him.
Yeah, we'll get to him. But I want to say the Browns should start Jameis Winston. But if you start Jameis Winston, you probably win more football games, and maybe playing Watson is the route to go to get a high enough pick to replace him. Like, it's that bad. Deshaun Watson can't be on this football team next year. Like, they have got to get rid of him. They've got to move on. It was a franchise destroying decision to give up what they gave for him. So I'm not sure whether the bigger takeaway is that the Cowboys defense is good or the Rams offense is bad. But I do know that this is really similar to last year when the Cowboys racked up 7 sacks and 2 picks in week 1 against a bad team in the Giants. And so we'll see what happens from there.
There's a lot of conversation about Deshaun Watson and Bryce Young, which is the worst trade, which destroyed a franchise more. It is unquestionably the Deshaun Watson trade. You didn't give Bryce Young a max. And honestly, if Carolina's bad this year, they can just go draft a quarterback, kind of wipe their hands clean, and Bryce Young's pretty much just an afterthought to what they've been doing. Deshaun Watson is, if they can't, he has to be on the roster next year, Shane. Maybe he can't play, but it's $127 million dead hit next year if you cut him. I think it's probably 50 to 60, somewhere in between it if he's just on the roster. So you just have to roster him and tell him to stay home, maybe, or tell him sit on the bench. But I don't even think you'd want him in the locker room.
I think the Deshaun Watson trade will go down as the worst trade in NFL history. It's worse than the Herschel Walker trade. It's the worst trade in the NFL history.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can even speak to MLB and NBA. And especially when you add obviously we're not going to get into all of it, but the PR aspect of this alone, and then you look at the on the field stuff. It's like you threw your soul away in the trash, and you didn't even gain anything by doing it. You sold your soul to the devil, and he laughed in your face and made your life worse. I don't even know what to say anymore. But at halftime, he was 7 for 15 for 36 yards and a pick. So I don't want to take too much away from Dallas. I obviously didn't think Dallas was going to be very good this year. I have them at 8 or 9 wins. I had them missing the playoffs, and I was arguing with my boss at the radio station, Sean Brace, online, said that he thinks that the most impressive team of week 1 or player or team was Dak and the Cowboys. And he talked about how they came out and they put it on a good defense, and they were an underdog and they came out and won big. I guess if you would have asked me who's your standout player or team from the weekend, I think I would have thought of 5 teams before Dallas, because I think the story of that game is so much more with Cleveland and Deshaun Watson. When you go 7 for 13 for 36 yards and a pick in the first half, you're giving the other offense the game. If Dallas didn't capitalize on that, it would be more of a story to me at that point. Maybe that's reductive, but I'm not walking out of that game oh man, I was so wrong on Dallas. Maybe I was off by a game or two. Maybe they'll be fine. Maybe they'll win 10, 11 games. I'm not walking out of that game man, they're a contender, and I was wrong. It's about Cleveland.
I didn't think Dak looked super sharp. I do think, however, that this could have been a potentially really problematic game, because Myles Garrett is a tough matchup for an offensive line starting 2 rookies, one of which is out of position. And you get them week 1 before they really get reps. So I thought it was a potential tough spot for their offense. I thought there were times Dak didn't look super sharp. That touchdown he threw to Brandon Cooks was really impressive. I thought empty, 0 blitz. He knew it was coming, and he's able to just throw that up to the pylon for Cooks to go get. So I thought there were moments where Dak looked really good. I thought there were moments where he didn't look super sharp. And, ultimately, I'm not going to, like you said, I'm not going to take a ton away from week 1. They handled what I thought could be, I picked Dallas to win, but they handled what I thought could be a difficult matchup in the trenches, and they were fine, which probably bodes well for them. They're not going to face a Myles Garrett every week. And so you buy some time for that young offensive line to gel. And so I guess that's my takeaway moving forward. We've got a couple comments here. Ryan on YouTube says the Cowboys O-line did not look good. They had to move Dak out of the pocket to give him time and threw a lot of short passes. And yeah, I think that's what you expect when you're starting 2 rookies on the line, kind of like I was talking about there. Joe Ciccoletti, longtime listener or viewer, I guess I should say, says the 2 teams that impressed him the most this week actually lost, the Colts and the Cardinals. And we will get to those games here momentarily.
One of those, but we'll get to that.
All right. The last thing I'll mention on this game, and Mark, you can just plug your ears because I'm going to talk about a kicker, and it'll be only the first of 2 times that I'm going to talk about a kicker, but Brandon Aubrey in this game, He was kind of a revolution last year, going 10 of revelation, not revolution, going 10 of 10 on kicks of 50 plus yards last year. He hit a 66-yard field goal in this game, but the play clock expired before the snap, so it didn't end up counting. Moved the Cowboys back and they punted, but he did hit 2 from 50 plus again and 2 in the 40s. So his hot streak continues, and the Cowboys roll the Browns week 1. Anything else on this game before we swing over to the Commanders?
Not much. Yeah. Again, I just want to emphasize, like, I think Dallas might lose this upcoming week to New Orleans. Like, I'm not walking out of that game giving Dallas like the week 1 crown. And I think that, again, I think Deshaun Watson's a train wreck. And I think the Browns, I was far too high on them at 8 and 9. I think this is a 5 or 6 win team.
All right. Well, let's keep rolling on here. Let's go to Washington at Tampa Bay to round out the division. Washington loses 20-37. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers open this game with 5 consecutive scoring drives. Baker Mayfield goes 24 of 30 for 289 yards and 4 touchdowns. Bucky Irving had a nice little debut, 62 yards on 9 carries, 2 receptions for 14 yards. I loved Bucky Irving in the draft. Glad to see him have a nice little performance there. The talk of this game, though, is Jayden Daniels. And I thought he was up and down. He did a lot of damage on the ground like we knew he could. He rushed for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. He set a Washington Commanders record for most QB carries in a game at 16. I think that is a little concerning. You don't want, and I'll get to this with Lamar too, you don't want a quarterback carrying it that many times. You especially don't want one as light as Jayden Daniels doing it. Overall, I thought their offense stunk. I mean, it's Cliff Kingsbury. It's what you're going to get. But the Commanders' top 3 receivers weren't receivers. It was 2 running backs and a 80-year-old Zach Ertz. I was surprised they didn't attack downfield more. Daniels was a scrambler who had really good deep accuracy in college. They only threw downfield 4 times, 4 passes of over 10 yards. Daniels was 1 of 4 on those. Terry McLaurin only had 17 yards. So I was surprised they didn't attack downfield a little more. Also, I find it comical when a professional athlete doesn't know how to slide. Like, you literally just fall down feet first. But if you watch Jayden Daniels, he was doing a pretty good job of avoiding contact, but he just like tumbles down and ends up like flipping over every time. You can go look up some of his runs. They all end very comically. What did you make of the Commanders and specifically Jayden Daniels in this one?
Yeah, I'll start with Jayden Daniels. Too much running. Just can't run 16 times as a quarterback that small. I mean, I guess I didn't see him take any crazy hits. It seemed like he did do his best to avoid it. But my number one takeaway for this game is that I think sometimes when a team hires a defensive coordinator as a head coach, I think in the offseason I might just overrate the improvement that's bound to happen with that. Because I saw them hire Dan Quinn, and I was not a fan of the hire. I'm not a Dan Quinn guy. But I said, you know what? At least he's a good defensive coordinator. And everywhere he's gone, he's able to implement his defense and make a difference. And I thought in Washington, they'd go from being one of the worst defenses in football to just being average to below average just by nature of adding Dan Quinn. I did that with another team that we'll get to as well on the card. But I need to stop doing that because it's so hard, I think, in 1 year to just turn over a defense and to get it to be what your system is. And they just don't have the talent on the defensive side of the ball, to be quite honest, to be a good defense at all. So I think my biggest takeaway here is actually more just that Commanders defense is not going to be good enough to win. I had them winning 8 games and being like a sneaky, frisky team. That defense isn't good enough to be sneaky or frisky. I think Jayden Daniels will have games where they put up more points. He will have games where their receivers have more than 7 catches for 55 yards total. But I don't think that the defense will allow them to win more than 5 or 6 games. So maybe I was a game or 2 low on Dallas and a game or 2 high on Washington. I think that's probably fair, but I think Washington, the offense will be better than this. The defense, I'm not sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, there it is, your NFC East report. Now we'll throw it around the rest of the league, and we'll talk about these games briefly here. Let's go to Thursday Night Football. where the Baltimore Ravens lost a thrilling game against the Kansas City Chiefs, 20-27. The story of this game was all the penalty flags. I hate how the NFL does this in week 1 every year. It's a ridiculous amount of flags due to all your dumb points of emphasis that they won't call anymore once you get to week 4. But it is what it is, and teams got to adjust to that. I just find it annoying to watch. But Xavier Worthy scored 2 touchdowns in his debut. He ended up with 3 touches for 68 yards and 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving. Lamar in this game, I thought, rushed too much too. And I hesitate to say that about Lamar because he doesn't have receivers. I guess it's not so much that he rushed too much. He rushed for 122 yards, but I thought he took some stupid hits, like a 3rd down and you're lowering your shoulder into 2 defenders 5 yards from the first down marker. And there's just no reason for that. You're not picking up that first down. Lamar's not going to survive the season if he's not smarter at picking and choosing his spots where to take hits. And so I want to see him make smarter decisions in those instances. But he rushes for under 22 yards. He throws for 273 and a touchdown. He led what would have been a game-deciding drive one way or the other. But Mark Andrews' toe was just out of bounds in the back of the end zone as time expired. And
I think it was Likely, actually.
Oh, I thought it was Andrews. Was it Likely?
Am I wrong here? I thought it was Likely that. Yeah, it was Likely.
Okay, it was Likely. Okay, his toe's just barely out of bounds. Baltimore had already signaled they were going to go for 2 in the win, so it wasn't going to overtime. And Lamar's favorite target was Isaiah Likely. He had 9 receptions for 111 yards and a touchdown in this one. So incredible performance from him. What's your big takeaway on this one?
By the way, before I get to my takeaway, my ultimate Isaiah Likely would be Mark Andrews if there was no Mark Andrews. Take looks great. That's one of the best takes I've ever had. I think I said it the week before Mark Andrews got hurt last year, and Isaiah Likely came in the second half and had a couple catches, and I was like, they're going to be fine. And one of the best takes I've ever had. My take from this game is actually the Ravens are going to be fine. Everyone's freaking out, and I understand they do rely on Lamar to do too much. Nothing new. That's been his whole entire career. But if you dive into this game, Baltimore fumbled on their own 13. Actually, Kansas City only got a field goal on that. They were lucky. Baltimore missed the field goal, and Baltimore also got a stop at the end of the game. Chiefs up 7 with 3 minutes to go. They get a stop. They get him to punt the ball. And then Lamar, who everyone's proclaiming as, a loser after this game, the classic usual Twitter discourse about Lamar Jackson. Lamar gets the ball back down 7 with a minute 50 seconds left and goes on an 11-play, 77-yard drive with a touchdown, basically, if his foot is one size smaller. And everyone's going to focus on the missed throw. He had the one missed throw where he missed a guy. He didn't see him. And he then, I think, lied about it to the media and said he was throwing to someone else. Lamar's a weird guy. We've talked about this a lot. He says weird stuff to the media. He tweets weird stuff. I think he's just a weird interpersonal person. But taking out that throw, 11, it's kind of like the similar thing with Jalen. It's like Jalen botched the snap on the last drive of the Green Bay game. If Jalen hikes that ball and pushes it in and they get 37 points, are people as negative? I think stupidly no, maybe. But it's kind of the same thing with Lamar. Like if Isaiah Likely's shoe size is a half a size smaller, we're talking about Lamar completely differently after this game. So,
always wear the smallest cleats you can if you're a football player out there.
And white, as Mahomes said. Yes. The guy's got to wear white cleats. I will say Isaiah Likely, one of the weirder press conferences of all time after the game. I don't know if you saw that.
I did
He's
not.
Like, if that's the best they've got, good luck in the postseason. It's like, well, they're the back-to-back champion. Like maybe any other team in the NFL, you can do the good luck in the postseason too. They're literally like they're the team that should
it's
be
literally the team that beat you to kept you from going for the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, it's an unreal quote. And he had some other like dumb things he said about how they should have won the game. He still thinks it's a touchdown, but the dumbest one is good luck in the postseason. Like,
there were some official screw jobs in this game for the Ravens, but that's not one of them. Like you can clearly see it in the replay. So I'm sad we got robbed of the opportunity to see that. I'm sad we got robbed of the opportunity to have the should they have gone for 2 discourse, no matter which way it turned out.
Yeah.
That's what I'm most let down about in this game.
They wouldn't have got it. You know they wouldn't have got the 2-point conversion, and then it's the week long of like, is that the smart play? I don't know. And I think it was. I think it would have been.
It robbed me of the opportunity to get on Twitter and talk about math and probability for at least 2 days. So I'm upset about I'm upset about the ruling, even though it was right.
You're on the right side of that, right? You think absolutely they should go for 2 if you score there?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially on the road at Arrowhead. I don't want to take that. If you give the ball, if you take it to overtime, there is a 50% chance that you never get the ball on offense, because if the Chiefs win the coin toss, Mahomes will lead a touchdown drive. There's not a doubt in my mind. So you're basically playing for the 50% chance you win the toss, and then you have to go do what you just did, engineer another touchdown drive. Like, I 100% would go for it in that situation.
I think I would go for it against any top team or any top offense, really. You said any other team, it's a discussion. You don't put it in Mahomes' hands. I would do the same with like Josh or Lamar or Jalen or Burrow or
I think there's some game flow considerations to take into. Yeah. I mean, if it's Steelers Falcons, you take that to overtime because you feel pretty good you're going to get a stop there. But there's some game flow considerations too. But in that instance, I would generally lean go. In that instance, it's 100% go for me.
As someone who had Ravens +3 in this game, I would have been a big fan of the decision to go for it either way.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into our Sunday slate. And I mentioned it earlier, but let's talk Steelers at the Falcons. The Steelers win 18-10. The Arthur Smith revenge game in Atlanta, where he just got fired. He led an offense that scored 0 touchdowns, but somehow still won the game. Sorry to Joe here. Chicoletti, he's a Falcons fan, says the Falcons don't need that stray there. I could have been talking about the Steelers too, by the way, but the Steelers are exactly who we thought they were, Mark. They are an elite defense with an inept offense, and that is who they have been for 5 years. In the last 5 years, Mark, they have had a top 6 ranked defense 3 times. They have had a top 20 ranked offense only once. And that's just where we're at. TJ Watt had 3 pressures and a sack. He also had 2 strip sacks that were wiped out by penalties. One was on him for an offsides that I didn't think was an offsides, but we never got a great view of it. The other one was not even on him. So his game could have been even more dominant. Kirk Cousins looked dreadful. I didn't think the Falcons offense made any sense. It was predictable. Out of 22 snaps in shotgun, they had 0 designed runs. Out of 26 snaps in pistol, they ran the ball 81% of the time. Just bizarre splits there. They did get a touchdown pass to Kyle Pitts, the only touchdown of the game, but Chris Boswell hit 6 field goals for the Steelers, 5 of which were from 40-plus yards. He also served as an emergency punter and got off a 43-yard punt out of his own end zone. So Chris Boswell, special teams player of the week. And Mark, I promise I will not talk about another kicker in this show.
You better not. No, I'm joking. But I was too high on the Falcons. I'll hand up. Picking them to go to the NFC Championship game and win 13 games, probably an overreaction. I thought that was truly how bad Arthur Smith and Desmond Ridder were, and I thought that was how bad the defense was. Thought that the defensive coordinator and the new head coach and the new quarterback would change a lot of that. I think we have some legitimate conversations to have about Kirk Cousins, and they're painful conversations because he looked horrible in every he couldn't plant to throw.
Well, and that's one of the things that we talked about when we did our QB rankings too, being concerned about Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers, both of them coming off that Achilles injury. That's why they were both dropped down our list some. And that's a real concern. And nothing about it was mitigated in this game for me.
So I'm looking at I was trying to find the tweet earlier. Yeah, we have a comment from Anthony. Man, Kirk looks so bad. Anthony's our guy. There was a comment. Bill Barnwell wrote an article. He topped out. I guess you don't expect Kirk Cousins to hit top speed a lot, but I guess he probably has a rush every game. He topped out at 10.4 miles per hour in that game, which was his lowest top speed in any game since 2017. Not that is anything too crazy. But there was a lot here that he didn't look like he had any confidence in his leg at all. And he was doing his turtle thing when there's any pass rush and throwing it away. I do think that there's probably a chance we get Penix. I think the Falcons are going to be 0-3. And that's a pretty tough thing they kind of needed this game to be quite honest. It was a home game, and I thought Pittsburgh was going to be really good, but I thought Atlanta could get this game until Fields started. Once they announced Fields was in, I felt more confident about Pittsburgh. Joe Chick commented Falcons will need to look themselves in the face after week 4 if it isn't going well and look down the bench and maybe get Penix warming up. Yeah, I think these 3 games that I think they're probably going to lose is probably the time to see what Kirk is and to see if he can wiggle out of this and get comfortable. And if not, I think it will be Penix time and you can get out of that Kirk contract after next year. So I hate to bring these conversations up, and I bet on Kirk for fantasy. I've got Kyle Pitts in a bunch of leagues. I have Kirk in a league or 2. But normally I'd say it's week 1. He's coming off an injury. It was concerning. It was really, really concerning. And then something else that was a bit concerning, Bijan Robinson did not blow me away at all in this game. I guess he was involved in the passing game, 5 catches for 43 yards. He had no explosion. It felt like out of the backfield, 18 for 68. Long carry of 13. It just felt like he couldn't get any chunk plays going here at all. And then on the other side of the ball with the running back, the Pittsburgh Steelers need to move on from Najee Harris and give Jaylen Warren more work. Last year, Najee Harris rushed for 4.1 yards per carry. That was his career high. He 3.8 his first year, 3.9 his second year, 4.1 his third year. And then yesterday he gets 20 carries and only gets 70 yards, 3.5 yards per carry, a long of 20. Jaylen Warren, I know he was hurt going into the game, but 2 attempts for 7 yards yesterday, 2 catches for 13 yards. Last year, Jaylen Warren had 149 carries to Najee's 255, 61 catches to Najee's 29. I just think Jaylen Warren would fit this offense so much better with what Fields wants to do. And I think the biggest conversation about this game, sorry to go too long on this game, but the biggest conversation here is they can't bench Fields because this is the only way that they're going to have a competent offense.
Yeah.
They need his running.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're all right, I'm just going to give this was going to be my final thought, but we've broached the subject here. So the biggest rookie quarterback winner from week 1, Michael Penix Jr. I mean, you go look at the other rookie quarterbacks, and we'll get to him in a minute, but Caleb Williams stunk. You go look at all the other quarterbacks, and I mean, Jacoby Brissett wins the game with New England, which, that's not like that's Drake May's fault, but it solidifies their decision to play Jacoby Brissett. And you look at Jaden Daniels, and I thought Daniels was fine. We mentioned he's up and down, but the biggest winner was Michael Penix Jr. because if the Falcons look like this, like you said, the next couple of weeks, he's going to play. And I think that would be the right move, not to overreact, but I mean, this is our week 1 overreaction show, not to overreact. And maybe, we know the Steelers have a tremendous pass rush and maybe that's just it, but Cousins just didn't look comfortable. He didn't look like he could move very well. So we'll see what happens there moving forward.
TJ Watt was so good in this game. It was absurd. He was by far the best player in this game.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to the Arizona Cardinals at the Buffalo Bills. The Bills win this game 34-28. Josh Allen fumbled the opening drive, and Kyler Murray started out hot as the Bills found themselves in a 17-3 hole, but Murray stumbled down the stretch. He was only 5 of 12 for 31 yards in the second half. The Cardinals offense generated only 4 first downs, and Josh Allen rallied. After that opening fumble, Allen led the Bills to score on 6 of their next 8 drives. This was a quiet debut for Marvin Harrison Jr. He only had 1 catch for 4 yards. He was also missed wide open for a game, what probably would have been a game-sealing touchdown by Kyler Murray. Sometimes you can't just stat sheet watch for wide receivers, but hopefully they can get on the same page. I've got a fun stat for you. Josh Allen recorded his 4th game with multiple rushing and passing touchdowns in his career. That ties someone for the most of all time. Mark, do you have a guess who it would be?
Jalen?
It is not Jalen.
I don't know then.
Steve Young.
I wouldn't have got that. No shot.
My guess when I was looking at it was Cam Newton, but it wasn't Cam. It's Steve Young.
Honestly, I lean towards Jalen because you asked me, and I thought the rushing touchdown aspect because I'm so obsessed with that. But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So what did you have in this one?
I It's a weird one because you look at the stats here in the box score for the Cardinals offense, and it doesn't look as impressive as it felt watching. It felt like they were always able to move the ball, but Kyler only threw for 162 yards. He ran for 57. He had a really good game on the ground. It felt like anytime they needed him to get going, he would get them going on the ground. James Conner was bad in this game, and I was watching that specifically because I had James Conner over 50 and a half rushing yards. He got 50. He had like 38 through 3 quarters. They just kept handing it off to him. He couldn't get anything going. He had a 20-yard carry. Other than that, he was 15 for 30 outside of that carry. So I just actually think that this Cardinals offense has a lot of room for improvement. I think they will run the ball better. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. will get involved, and they scored 28 points. So part of me wants to say, like, man, I'm walking out of this game feeling really good about the Cardinals offense, even though I don't think it was that great, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's maybe something to say about the Bills defense that they gave up 28, or if it had to do with turnovers. But I think that this game was like one of the games of the weekend where it's like, oh yeah, these teams are both kind of exactly what I thought they were coming into the year. And it's like, I think the Bills are like a 9-ish win team that will go as far as Josh Allen carries them on their back. And I think the Cardinals are like a frisky, competitive 9-ish win team that will, I think, compete for a playoff spot.
All right. Let's keep rolling here. Let's go to Chicago, where the Chicago Bears beat the Tennessee Titans 24-17. It's the same old for the Bears. Their defense and their special teams made up for an awful offense as they dug out of a 17-0 hole to win 24-17. Caleb Williams threw for only 93 yards. The Bears had only 147 yards of offense. The offense scored 0 touchdowns. Meanwhile, the defense and special teams each scored a touchdown. And the Bears end up winning. Will Levis threw one of the worst interceptions you will ever see in your entire life. You got to go look it up online if you haven't seen it. It was truly horrendous. Will Levis stinks. Caleb Williams stunk in this game. Like there were a couple moments where he made some highlight looking plays, but he generally wasn't good overall. And again, rookie quarterback, first start, you give him some time there. He did become the first number 1 pick to win in week 1 since David Carr did it in 2002. Bears fans, don't go look up how David Carr's career ended, but hopefully Caleb can avoid that trajectory. But the Bears do get off to that 1-0 start. Takeaways from this one.
Yeah, shockingly bad offensive performance here from Chicago. He missed a wide open throw at one point for a touchdown, and I tweeted it out. And of course, all the Caleb Williams haters were right there in my mentions, ready to pounce on it. There was a drop touchdown from Keenan Allen. The running game was horrible. I think DeAndre Swift is one of the more overrated players in the NFL at this point. 10 carries for 30 yards. He was being drafted as like a fantasy starter in some leagues this year. I just don't see it. Keenan Allen, 4 catches on 11 targets. Rome Odunze, 1 catch on 4 targets. Like, just so inefficient on offense. But it wasn't even as bad as the other offense, because I understand Will Levis might have had better numbers, 127 yards, 19 for 32, but he was making such actively detrimental plays to his team with the interceptions, with the fumble. I tweeted out after the second drive they had, like, my first take of the 2024 NFL season is Will Levis is not the guy. Like, this guy is not good. And then of course, they go up 17-0. And I had a couple Titans fans quote tweeting it and being like, what? And then I think after that play, he went like 5 for 15 for like 30 yards and a pick. That pick at the end of the game, and you brought it up, the side, he flicks it over trying to throw it out of bounds to the sidelines. That play, it was 3rd and 6 at like midfield. There's no difference between taking a 5-yard sack and throwing it out of bounds on 3rd and 6. You're punting the ball away.
You might take a delay a game to move the punter back anyways.
Yeah, you have a 1-point lead. It made no sense. It was just one of the startling moments of the weekend. And I would say that guy just doesn't have QB instincts. Will
Levis heard some nerd online say sacks are a QB stat, and he was like, not on my watch. Not today.
And he did take some sacks in this game too. And it felt like he was under a lot of pressure. So maybe that O-line is just not ready. But I think he he was throwing sidearm, and I know he like changed his arm angles, but he was throwing it into the ground. Like it's not like he was changing his angle and getting it through a tight window. Like I don't get anything about the way he plays the quarterback position.
Yeah. All right. Well, 7 games left here. Let's go to Cincinnati. Speaking of shockingly bad offenses, the Patriots beat the Bengals 16-10. The Patriots won behind a good run game and a stifling defense, which is going to be key for them this year. Ramondre Stevenson had 25 carries for 120 yards and a touchdown. Go Sooners. Oh, shoot. I forgot I wasn't mentioning them. Now, bad thoughts. Shake it off. Burrow was pressured on only 6 of 35 dropbacks in this game, which is the 3rd lowest pressure rate of his career. He averaged only 5.6 yards per attempt when he wasn't pressured. On those 6 pressures, he was sacked 3 times and he only completed 1 pass. The Bengals started 1-3 last year. They started 0-2 the year before that. Overall, they are 1-5 in season openers under Zach Taylor, with the lone victory requiring overtime in 2021 to beat a Vikings team that would end up starting 1-3. That was their only win of their first 4 games. So, they lost that game. Whatever. They were 1-3 after 4 games. So I don't know what's going on with the Patriots and how they conduct themselves in camp. They got to figure that out because this is just routine for them. And my other guy here, Christian Gonzalez, Joe Ciccoletti mentioned him. I loved Christian Gonzalez in the draft. I thought he was off to a great start last year before he got injured. He did a fantastic job in this game against Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase was held in check for really the whole game by Gonzalez. I thought it was a great performance from him.
The Bengals had 19 yards in the first 25 minutes of this game. That's just a shocking stat. And I will say this till my face turns blue. Joe Burrow is a handsome merchant. He doesn't get criticized because people think he's cool and think he's handsome, or he's Joe Cool, Joe Shiesty, whatever you want to say. He went to the Super Bowl once and he's good forever. Will never get criticized. Jalen Hurts has received, in my opinion, I haven't listened to all the shows yet. There has been more negative criticism of Jalen Hurts than Joe Burrow after week 1, in my opinion. One of those 2 players, Jalen Hurts, went on the road, or not on the road, it's a neutral field. But
that's on the road.
He went on the road. Yeah. Put up 34 points on a playoff team from last year, and one of a team that was supposed to win their division. Put up 34 points. So obviously, was it perfect? Absolutely not. Put up 34 points. Joe Burrow put up 10 points in New England as an 8-point favorite. Actually, I'm sorry. He was not on the road. He was at home. Joe Burrow lost to New England at home as an 8.5-point favorite and put up 10 points. So Joe Cool, Joe Shiesty, where was that at? Where was clutch Joe Burrow when it was a 1-possession game the entire game? They got the ball back with 51 seconds left. 51 seconds left. Down 6 points. They punted. Or they got the ball back with 3 minutes left. It was a 51-second drive. They punted with 2 minutes to go. What are we doing here? This is supposed to be the clutch guy. A fumble on the goal line and a drop touchdown pass. So what? They have 17 points. Or they have 24 points against New England. Like I don't know. And of course we have someone like making excuses for Joe Burrow because it's what people do. Joe Burrow gets excuses handed to him every single time they fail. Jalen Hurts, when he succeeds, has to be criticized. The Jalen Hurts Joe Burrow thing. Ever since I kind of highlighted the similarities of their careers so far earlier this year on my radio show, the way that those 2 players get talked about drives me insane. I'm not going to get into the sociological reasons that I think exist there, but Bengals, what a joke. I think I'm happy. I think I was right putting them at 7-8 wins.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, he threw for 168 yards against this defense. And I mean, sure, the Patriots are supposed to have a decent defense, but I don't think that that's what you're expecting when you open the season against them at home. At home, you mentioned you're at home. Like it's got to be better than that. That can't be the product that you put on the field. I was looking for what was New England. New England was 9th in DVOA defensively last year, so good defense. They're not that good. It's not that good.
Ian commented, beware of blonde Burrow. Yeah, maybe he needs to dye his hair back. Matt McGinty said he smoked that cigar in college that one time. He's good for life. That's my guy. Yeah, that's what it is. It really is. People remember 2019 LSU and they remember the 2021 Super Bowl now? Are we 3 Super Bowls removed from Joe Burrow going there and being basically granted, face of the NFL the rest of his career? Joe Chick says, look, it's the Bengals way. They come out struggling the first 4 games. Look at 2 years ago, and then they go on and tear the last 12. Here's what I'll say. The Cincinnati Bengals, with their schedule, cannot afford to be losing games to the New England Patriots. You play the Steelers twice, the Ravens twice. Maybe the Browns aren't as hard. They also have the Chiefs coming up this week on their schedule. They go to Kansas City. They have let me see what else is sprinkled in here. They have the Eagles sprinkled into their schedule. They have the Cowboys sprinkled in. It's actually not now that I'm looking at it, it's not that hard outside of the divisional games in those 2. They've got some Panthers in there. They've got some easy games in there. But I don't think the Bengals are going to be able to rip off the 10-game win streaks they have in the past. Their defense is not as good as it was.
I love how you scan down that list and you're like, this schedule's really hard. Oh, they play the Panthers. It's not that bad.
Yeah, once you see the Panthers, you're like, well, that's a win. So I can't talk too much about this. But yeah, they do play Kansas City this week. I think they're going to be 0-2. And last year when Cincy started so slow, everyone had the calf injury to point to. It was like miraculous that Burrow even made it back for week 1. So it's like, oh, you can't criticize the slow start. He's still hurt. He's playing hurt. But then he got hurt in general and missed the rest of the year before he could even get healthy, I guess. We make excuses after excuses after excuses for Joe Burrow.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to Indianapolis, where the Houston Texans pulled out a close one, 29-27. Joe Mixon rushed for 159 yards on 30 carries, had a touchdown, as Houston outpossessed the Colts 40 minutes to 20 minutes, which is insane. 4th and goal at the 2. Let me set the stage for you. 4th and goal at the 2-yard line with 4:42 left. The Texans are up 2. And DeMeco Ryans opted to go for it rather than kick the field goal to go up 5. They score a touchdown when Stroud finds Diggs in the back of the end zone, which essentially ices the game. It made it 29-20. The Colts went on a touchdown drive. It wasn't enough. Maybe that validates.
It mattered some.
Yeah.
On the show.
Maybe it validates the decision not to kick the field goal, although you play defense differently if a touchdown wins it. But to me, the thing to take away from this game is Anthony Richardson. He is a roller coaster, man. He might have had the most impressive touchdown throw I have ever seen. It was a post route that traveled 65.3 yards in the air. He also slipped on his drop and he threw it off his back foot. Like he wasn't even able to step into it. That's incredible. He also missed some gimme throws, including sailing an interception in the red zone. And so, man, it's there for Richardson. He has got to get that consistency because those are crippling mistakes, but he's exciting when it hits. I'm excited to watch him throughout the season and see where he goes.
Yeah, he's a crazy one because he had 9 completions.
Yeah.
Like he had 9 completions, 9 for 19. And it felt like that watching it. Like it did feel like they went long stretches of the game without having a passing attack. And then they'd hit these big plays. I mean, 212 yards on 9 completions is wild. But that big play you talked about, it's hard to, I mean, he has 3 to 4 plays a game that are just like, 3 people on the planet at most can do what he's doing. But
can I give you a stat?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, what do you think the league leader in average depth of target was last year?
Oh, I have no idea. What is it?
Okay, so it was Will Levis at 10.5 yards. Then there were 4 guys over 9 yards. So there's
I would have guessed like 9.5. Honestly,
there was only 5 guys over a 9-yard ADOT. Do you want to guess what his ADOT was in this game?
Was it like 15?
16.5.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like a lot of people who aren't nerds like us are going to hear that and be like, whoa, is that crazy? That's crazy. Yeah,
that's insane.
When you said 10.5 for Will Levis, I was actually surprised there was one that high. I would have guessed it was like 9.5 for the leader. So yeah, that's shocking stuff. But Jonathan Taylor actually didn't look great in this game. What I'll say is I felt like for a lot of this game that Houston had it in control. And like you said, Houston scores to go up 9, and that ended the game. And, they made it look a little better. Are people as positive on the Colts if they lose the game 29-20? Probably not. but I think people are walking out and they remember Richardson going on that drive to make it a 2-point game with 3 minutes to go. And that's fine. There was a lot of this game that he was just chucking it to the ground and couldn't locate targets 5 to 10 yards away. But when it's good, it's amazing. And that's the Anthony Richardson kind of dilemma we'll see all year. What I will say is I feel very justified going into the game. I said that their secondary was bad. I think that it was, and they were able to, have 234 yards. But what I did not give them credit for was how bad their run defense would be because they gave up, Joe Mixon had a huge day. Everyone's going to talk about Stephon Diggs from this game, 2 touchdowns. He had 6 catches. The guy they should be talking about, and he didn't have any touchdowns, so that's what's going to take it away, is the guy who had, I think, quadruple almost as many yards as Stephon Diggs with Nico Collins. Nico Collins also had 6 catches, but his were for 117 yards. And to me, watching this game, he felt like the true number one. He felt like the guy that they were going to make big plays and on third down. He had the same amount of catches as Diggs, only one more target than Dell. But that's been a fantasy thing all year, people trying to figure out how those 3 receivers would break down. I think Nico will be the lead dog, and I think Dell and Diggs will probably see about the same amount of targets. So I think my biggest takeaway from that game is Nico Collins impressed me more than anybody on the field. I thought he looked like the best receiver in the game and maybe a top 10 receiver in the sport. He had a couple plays in that game that were really, really impressive.
All right. Let's keep the ball rolling here. Let's go to Miami, where the Miami Dolphins beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 20-17. The Jags are going to jag. I mean,
I don't have much here. Yeah.
They were up 17-7 in the red zone with 2:30 left in the third quarter. They lost the game. They fumble on the goal line. They ran one of the stupidest 4th down plays you'll ever see on a 4th and 1 from their own 32. If you're ever tempted on 4th and 1 to hand the ball off 6 yards behind the line of scrimmage to a guy running parallel to the line of scrimmage, turn in your clipboard, turn in your badge, and go coach middle school football somewhere. That's an asinine play call for an NFL football team to make. The Jags will be a deeply unserious football team as long as Press Taylor is there. And unfortunately, I think that means as long as Doug Peterson's there. I don't know if Doug's just trying to get run out of the NFL so he can retire without being like, I'm done. The Jags are a frustrating team. Trevor Lawrence had a really nice pass to Brian Thomas Jr. in the back of the end zone. That was a great catch that Calvin Ridley definitely doesn't get 2 feet down on that. Last year, we saw it time and time again. On the Dolphins side, they used Devon Achane quite a bit differently. He only had 10 carries, 24 yards. But they passed it to him 7 times for 76 yards. And I do love the usage of Achane to try to get him more targets in space instead of touches behind the line of scrimmage, because he's a small guy and he's going to be explosive. And I think you're going to have to hand him the ball some, but I like the idea of throwing to him out of the backfield, putting him in the slot, things like that. But overall, I really don't have much to take away from this other than the Jags are just chokers. They're going to stay that way.
Yeah, no, I that's absolutely what they are. I don't have much on this game. Doug Peterson coached a horrible game. They threw the ball 21 times. I don't understand why. Brian Thomas Jr. was really impressive, even outside of the touchdown catch. He had a drawn pass interference that helped him at one point. But yeah, Doug had a terrible game. I think that's the main takeaway here. This was kind of the game I didn't pay much attention to, but I have no Miami takes here. No Miami takeaways. It's all about Jacksonville.
Yeah, I mean, we got a comment here from Ian on YouTube. Peterson going for it on his own 32 is crazy. And it is. They had the lead, Mark. They're ahead 17-14. And they went for it on a 4th and 1 on the first play. This is the first play of the fourth quarter. You literally had a commercial break to talk about this and be like, hey, what if we just QB sneaked it? I mean, it's one thing if you QB sneak it on 4th and 1. Baffling. And the Dolphins didn't even score off of it. They missed the field goal. So maybe it was a fine call. It's wild to me. How bad the Jags looked in this one, but
horrible. Speaking
of horrible, let's talk about the Carolina Panthers, Mark. Everybody wants to know your take on the Panthers, who lost 47-10 in New Orleans to the Saints. Let's check in on Bryce Young. First play of the season, new head coach, resurrected Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield's career. Bryce Young's going to break out, and he throws an interception on his first pass attempt. Panthers did not cross midfield until after the 2-minute warning in the first half. Bryce Young ended 13 of 30 for 161 yards, 2 interceptions, and 4 sacks. And I literally don't have a Saints point in this game. Like, congratulations, you beat up on a FCS team. I don't know what to take away from it.
I actually think there's a chance the Saints might be really good this year. And I know no one wants to hear that. And it's not really all about this game, although I will say they did everything you could possibly want them to do in this game to a terrible opponent on offense and on defense. But the Saints, I just think that they're this ugly team. They're boring. We don't care about them. We don't like Dennis Allen. Derek Carr is unliked. If you go through their position groups, and I kind of said this on the NFC South preview, they were initially a playoff team for me. I got caught up with the Arizona hype, or not hype, just kind of the offense, and I kind of bought in and made them my surprise playoff team instead of just having the Saints be my 7th playoff team. But you go through the defense, and they're really good at every level. If Chase Young is resurgent, they have a lot of pieces in the secondary. Alontae Taylor, Paulson Adebo, Honey Badger. They just drafted Cooley McKinstry. They have Marshawn Lattimore. They actually might have one of the best secondaries in football, in my opinion. The questions are in the front 7, but I think they're still pretty solid there as well, even if it is a little bit older. And then you look at the offense, they have options out wide. Alvin Kamara, I think, has just been underrated at this point as people have thrown him away as old. He's still one of the best weapons in the NFL on offense. 15 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown. He had 5 catches for 27 yards. I get it why people want to kind of just write off the Saints and say they're going to be the same old Saints. I think there's a chance that if the Falcons don't live up to what I thought they were going to be, that the Saints are kind of that team that takes advantage of maybe not the best division and really goes 11, 12 wins. I think that's on the table.
All right. Let's get into the afternoon slate. We got 3 games left here. Let's go to Los Angeles, where the Raiders lose to the Chargers 22-10. The Chargers' first 7 possessions, none of them resulted in more than 15 yards. But in the Jim Harbaugh way, they continued to slam their heads into a brick wall until it finally started to crumble. And they end up winning this game. Antonio Pierce failed the 4th down decision test here, down 16-10 in the 4th. They punted on a 4th and 1 from a cross midfield with 7 minutes left. Just mind-numbingly stupid decision. The Chargers answered with a 92-yard touchdown drive to seal the game. The feel-good story of this game is J.K. Dobbins, who injured his ACL in 2021, injured his ACL in 2022, battles back from that and ruptures his Achilles in the 2023 opener. He had 10 carries for 135 yards and a touchdown in this one. I really hope J.K. Dobbins is able to stay healthy and have a good season this year. Nobody deserves it more than that guy. But the Chargers win 22-10. Any thoughts on this one?
I renounce my Raiders belief. And it's not because of the game. The defense played great. Minshew had 257. The reason I renounce my Raiders belief, Antonio Pierce, that punt decision is the worst punt decision of the last decade. And
get him out.
He needs to be fired today. I think that this team's good enough to win some games. I think they win that game with any other coach in the NFL. The Chargers were bad. The Chargers were begging the Raiders to do something, and they couldn't do anything. So good for Max Crosby threatening to, demand a trade if they didn't hire Antonio Pierce. They made a horrible, horrible decision.
Per the Surrender Index on Twitter, their decision to punt from the Chargers 43 on 4th and 1 with 7:15 remaining while losing by 6 ranks in the 99.9th percentile of all cowardly punts since 1999.
And 1999 is a different time than the last decade. I would say in the last decade, if you shrunk it, I thought I saw someone say it was the worst decision. I think it was 2000. I think it was 2012 was the number I saw. Maybe it's truly an astonishing punt. They also kicked a field goal at one point that was really, really cowardly. But yeah, just really a bad job by Antonio Pierce. Lost this game single-handedly, in my opinion.
Yeah. I was trying to scroll through the fourth down decision bot. Yeah, here we go. Fourth down decision bot said that it cost them 8.5% win probability, which is massive because like 2% is a strong go for it. And so very, very bad decision. And yeah, that's fireable if you call that, in my opinion. So
totally agree.
Not that you're going to fire a guy in week 1, but anyways,
Joe Chick says, what's worse, the punt decision for the Raiders or the Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Matt LaFleur kicking a field goal when they were down 8 to make a one-score game. Well, the best part about that Matt LaFleur decision is that he did it again on Friday against the Eagles. It wasn't as late in the game. I know there was like 8 or 9 minutes left, but Matt LaFleur is addicted to kicking field goals to take a one-score game to a one-score game. He can't get enough of it. He loves it more than anything in the world. But no, I'd say this Raiders decision is worse. At least you're getting points when you kick a field goal.
Yeah, I also love we're up 3 late in the game and we kick a field goal to go up less than a touchdown.
Yeah,
that's another great one. But okay, Denver at Seattle. There were some sweet uniforms in this game. Love those Seattle throwbacks. Seattle wins 26-20. They were slow out of the gate on offense. Geno Smith threw an interception on his second snap. 5 of their first half drives went for 1 or less yard, and they had 2 safeties, which is wild to take 2 safeties in a game. Geno did scramble for a 34-yard touchdown, though, Mark, which made him the oldest player to score a 30-plus yard rushing touchdown this millennium. I thought that's a wild stat. On the Broncos side, Bo Nix averaged 3.3 yards per attempt on 42 passes. That is the 6th lowest yards per attempt in any game with at least 40 passes. He was 2 of 12 for 42 yards with 2 interceptions on passes over 10 air yards. Feel real not that I ever wavered in this, but I feel real confident that Bo Nix is what we thought Bo Nix was.
This final score does not do justice to how bad this game was and how bad Denver is. It actually makes me look more at Seattle, and it's like, how did you allow this to be a close game? You look at how Denver scored their points early in the game. Seattle throws a pick. Denver leads a 4-play, 3-yard drive for a field goal. Seattle throws the next one. Denver later on in the second quarter, -2 yards on 4 plays to get a field goal. Denver later on in their next scoring drive, 5 plays for 26 yards. And they got 2 safeties sprinkled in there. They didn't put together a good drive until the touchdown drive at the end of the game to go down 6 with 2 minutes to go. And this was a game. Like, that says more about Seattle than Denver, honestly. Denver was so bad in this game, and Seattle's O-line was that bad that they allowed it to be a close game with 2 safeties and a bad pick and a fumble. Just bad. I feel worse about both of these teams coming out.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into the Sunday night game. Instant classic. The Rams and the Lions go into overtime. Mark slept through the game because he had to have a morning flight, but we're going to talk about it. He was able to catch up this morning. Detroit wins 26-20 in overtime. The Lions had the most Lions drive ever to walk it off in overtime, just smashing the Rams in the trenches, powering down the field. On the game, they had a 67.7% rushing success rate, which is the highest of any of the last 3 seasons for the Lions. This is how they built their team to win, and it worked. On the Rams side, Cooper Kupp's back. Man, he had 14 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown. I thought Stafford played really well. He was pounded mercilessly behind a porous offensive line. He was hit 12 times, pressured 14 times, sacked twice, and he just kept chugging along. I thought he played well. The Rams were missing both offensive tackles in this game. They lost Steve Avila in the game. They lost Puka Nacua in the game, and they took the Lions, who are considered a threat for the 1 seed in the NFC. They took them to overtime on the road. I think this team is legitimate if they can get healthy and stay healthy. I just don't know if that's in the cards for this offensive line that's already so banged up. Maybe it's not fair because he's played an entire injury-free season, but I just am always going to have lingering in the back of my head concerns about Stafford's durability long-term, especially taking hits. So the Rams are a fun offense. They just got to get healthy.
Yeah, I didn't obviously watch this game, so I can't speak too much on it. I'm shocked that the Lions didn't put up more than 20 points in regulation on that Rams defense. Maybe they're better than I thought they'd be coming into the year. I mean, I guess they did run the ball really well, 5.3 yards per carry. I guess I'm just shocked that the passing offense wasn't better. Jared Goff only had 217 yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 3 catches for 13 yards. What happened here to the Lions passing attack? I'd probably walk out of this game just from the condensed game and watching the highlights and looking at the box score. Probably walk out feeling worse about Detroit and better about LA than I did going into the year. So I obviously can't speak too intelligently, though.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our week 1 wrap up. Obviously not touching on Monday Night Football because it's yet to be played, but tonight we can watch Jets 49ers. There's not 14 games going on, so you guys can check that one out for yourselves, I'm sure. But, again, each week we want to come and give you guys, we're going to lead off with the NFC East games. So you can catch up on the division rivals, even if you don't have a chance to watch them. And we'll throw around the league so you know what's going on league-wide. But think of us as a great companion podcast for your Eagles viewing experience. Mark, before we get out of here, do you have any final thoughts? I don't. My Penix take was my final thought, and I got to it early. So do you got any final thoughts for us?
Yeah, I'll probably just do my final thought when we record on Mondays with this Monday Night Football game. I bet the Jets if I was looking at the game tonight. I would go Jets +4, +4.5. I don't know where the number's sitting at now, but I wouldn't lie. I was more confident in that than I am now after watching Kirk Cousins because I'm a little worried about Aaron Rodgers coming up the same injury.
At least he's had more time, but
yeah,
still, yeah.
That's true. But yeah, I probably underplayed that all offseason as a concern for both Cousins and Rodgers out of me not thinking that they move around that much. So that's kind of the big X factor there. I'll be betting it, but maybe not. It was going to be maybe a 3-4 unit bet for me. I think that's going to be a 1 unit bet now. So I'll be on the Jets, but not overly confident.
Here, I've got one for you. My final thought, the 49ers since 2021 are only 12-12 through the first 8 games of the season. They're 23-4 in the back half of the season. So the Jets are catching them at the right time if Rodgers is healthy and ready to go. But we'll be watching it tonight. You guys check it out. Thank you for joining us for episode 169 of Chalk Talk. If you like what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. Lots of great content coming your way this week on the Eagles Pinpole Network. Please drop us a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter. I am at Shane Half NFL. He is at Mark Henry Jr., and we will catch you guys next time.